Johnny M's Extremely Entertainment Show is brought to you by the Simpsons Siblings podcast. Join the Pixel Slayers Sari Torres and her brother Sean as we go through just Simpsons episodes and talk about them. Find us at simpsonsiblings.com or on any podcast app.
It's Sunday night, and it's time for Johnny M's Show!
Hello everyone across the USA, this is Johnny M, and it's time for another extremely entertainment show. It's Sunday, November 27th, 1994, and we're back in action. Thanks for listening in this week. If this is your first listen in, I just want to say welcome aboard and get ready for your first late night cruise through the world of video games and entertainment. Now let's check out the charts. The top 5 grossing movies this weekend were The Santa Claus at $20 million, Star Trek Generations, $13 million, Interview with the Vampire Chronicles, at $11.7 million, Junior, with $9.8 million, and A Low Down Dirty Sham for $7.9 million, it looks like it grossed. So, Star Trek Generations had a strong opening weekend at number 2, but in my opinion, it's number 1. Seeing the Next Generation cast with the original cast is definitely worth the cost of 10 movie tickets to me. To no one's surprise, not a whole lot of people want to see a pregnant Terminator this week, with Junior opening at a weak 4th place. Perhaps Arnold should stick to action flicks. In the world of music, we have the top 10 Billboard songs this week. Number 1, I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men. Number 2, Here Comes the Hot Stepper by Ine Kamosi. Number 3, On Bended Knee by Boyz II Men again. Number 4, Another Night from The Real McCoy. Number 5, Always from Bon Jovi. Number 6, Secret from Madonna. Number 7, All I Wanna Do from Sheryl Crow. Number 8, I Wanna Be Down by Brandy. Number 9, Never Lie from Immature. And number 10 this week is You Want This from Janet Jackson. Boyz II Men's looking impressive with 2 songs in the top 10 charts this week. All I Want to Do from Sheryl Crow deserves to go higher, as in my opinion that is, as it is a refreshing new blend of country and rock. One thing's for sure though, I'll always choose a different Bon Jovi song to listen to when I really want to rock out. And for video games this week, Blockbuster's top rentals are number 1, Donkey Kong Country for the SNES. Number 2, Sonic & Knuckles for the Genesis. Number 3, Earthworm Jim for the Genesis and SNES. Number 4, Mortal Kombat 2 for the Genesis and SNES. And number 5, Maximum Carnage for the Genesis and SNES. 3 amazing platformers, a brutally awesome fighter, and an extremely impressive Spider-Man game on the list this week. It's definitely one of the best years ever to be a gamer. So it looks like that's what the people want this week. We'll be right back with the news that you need.
This is Humpty. When I'm not at Burger King, I'm listening to Johnny M.
Welcome back. Now it's time for the news. Sega's surprise new system, the 32X, has been released this week. The system costs $160, and it will turn your Genesis into a 32-bit machine. We have some big Street Fighter news this week as well. Capcom has confirmed they are working on their 3rd release of Street Fighter, and it is based on a movie which is coming out next year. The game is said to be using a digitized character models instead of the hand-drawn models that we're used to from the previous game. So pretty much going after the Mortal Kombat look, which will definitely be a change. The game planned for a spring release next year, and it looks like it's coming to Sega's new 32X system first. That's the news. Now it's time to go over this week's new gaming releases. Donkey Kong is back, and damn does he look good. Nintendo's Ape has a new look and a sidekick with him in Donkey Kong Country for the SNES. The game is a platformer, sort of like Mario, but you have the ability to throw objects at enemies or row them off the map. It is one of the best games of the year, which is saying a lot given the amazing games that we have seen. The graphics are absolutely spectacular, the characters are 3D rendered, and the game looks better than many games releasing on newer systems. The Genesis last month got the amazing Sonic and Knuckles, and this month it gets the disgustingly awesome Booger Man. The game plays a lot like last year's Aladdin platformer, except you damage your enemies with boogers that you flick at them. For even more damage, drink some milk to power up a loogie, or even let one rip. It seems like this game was created to be as gross as possible, and it may not be for everyone's taste, or lack of. Now we have a couple of 32X launch titles that I want to talk about this week. First of which is Doom. It's pretty dang great to be able to play this game on a big screen TV. My 386 can barely run it, and this console port, with the exception of a few drawbacks, is much of a better way to play this. Of course, if you have a several $1,000 state-of-the-art PC, that would probably be the better way, but even then, you're stuck on a little monitor at your desk. I'd rather be sitting on the couch. So about those drawbacks. First, you don't get any of the last episode levels, which honestly does sting a little. Also, the sound takes a bit of a hit compared to the PC version running with a sound card. For the common man, though, I would say this is still the superior way to play Doom. That is, until the 486 prices start coming down, and most of us can play it on hardware that it was intended to run on. Doom on 32X definitely shows what the system can do, and it gets me excited for potential PC ports. The other game I want to discuss this week is Star Wars Arcade for 32X. The game is probably a system seller in my opinion. You can't get this experience on any other home console. The graphics are incredible, the gameplay is solid, I keep coming back for more. It does become apparent though, with the 32X's weakness, as the sound card of the 32X doesn't exist. It actually uses the Genesis hardware for that. This is a strong port of the arcade title, but the sound can't compare. For some, the levels can also be repetitive, but I think that's mostly a matter of opinion, given the genre of this game. For gaming on the go this week, Sega has you covered with Sonic Triple Trouble. This is sort of Sonic 3 for the Game Gear, and it's an amazing effort, I have to say. It's amazing to see what Sega can squeeze into these tiny little 8-bit handheld cartridges. If you played Sonic 1, 2, and Chaos on the Game Gear, you know what this is already. While I have to say I believe that the Sonic handheld series has peaked with last year's title, there's still a bunch of fun to be had, and while he isn't a playable character, it is nice to see Knuckles even if he's just a boss in the game. Those are what's new this week. We'll return in a bit. And we are back. It's time for what's in Johnny's head. So this week, I want to talk about the general state of the video game industry. First off, let me say that it's an extremely great time to be a gamer. We have a large variety of amazing games on multiple platforms that just seem to keep impressing me when it comes down to the graphics and gameplay. When it comes down to the current top players in the market, you really can't lose with either of them. In fact, you'll have a hard time not having both systems. A year ago, if you would have asked me if I was ready for new hardware, I would have been the first to say absolutely. But the lukewarm releases of both the 3DO and Jaguar, with their weird quirks and lack of games, made me realize the most important thing is the games. Now, 3DO finally started getting these big titles teased at last year's CES, but honestly, I'm too busy playing the new Sonic or Donkey Kong to really care. The Jaguar really let me down with its promise of 64-bit graphics. I was really hoping for a big Atari comeback this year, but it took almost an entire year for Alien vs. Predator, the only game that looks like it deserves to be called a 64-bit title, to even arrive. My point is that without games, fancy hardware is just a pretty living room ornament. I think Sega and Nintendo knew what they were doing, focusing on games first and waiting before releasing their new hardware. Looking at Sega's Virtual series of games and Cruis'n USA running on Nintendo's future hardware in the arcades, I could see a pretty big advantage graphically over the 3DO and Jaguar. Sega is releasing a expansion system for its current 16-bit Genesis, which will make it 32-bit. It's a heck of a lot cheaper to spend $160 to jump into the new generation, but even that seems sort of unnecessary when you have games that look like Donkey Kong Country and Earthworm Jim. They look amazing running on the current hardware. Now we have Sony jumping into the mix with their PlayStation. It's already seen a launch in Japan and has been faring better there than the Atari or 3DO have here. But I'm still skeptical. They plan on releasing their system in the US next year, at about the same time as Sega and Nintendo plan on releasing their main flagship systems. That's going to be a tough sell. Sega and Nintendo now have years of experience in game heritage that a new player cannot just compete with right out the gate. With so many players in the market now, and another one coming, I'm starting to wonder how much longer the market can support so many different platforms. I have a feeling when the dust clears from the battlefield, the two left standing will be Sega and Nintendo. What I will say to you, the consumer, is spend your precious video game money on what matters most. Video games. Let the quality titles decide your choice, and not just flashy promises of a future that's not quite here yet. Choosing a new platform too early may leave you out in the cold and out of your money when the biggest players finally show their cards. Of course, if you have a lot of disposable income and time on your hands, buy them all and have fun. But I have a feeling, even with owning all the systems out right now, the two you'll end up playing the most are SNES and Genesis. And that's what's in Johnny's head. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's Mail Call. Our first letter is from Bryce from Arizona. He is asking what I think of cheat codes and cheat devices such as the Game Genie in games. Well, I really don't see a problem with them. I mean, I could see them being used to enjoy really hard games and get past a boss that you just cannot beat. I mean, if you bought the game, you deserve to be able to get the most out of it, and if you can't do that yourself, I don't see what's wrong with using the code. Some of us just want the story and don't have time to grind it out, so I can understand wanting to somewhat fast forward through the hardest parts. My answer may not be popular with the purist gamers, but no one is making them use cheat codes, so what's the problem? My next letter comes from Gavin W. from Michigan. He wants to know what I think of devices like Sega's upcoming Sega Channel and if it will shift the way we rent or buy games in the future. So before I answer this letter, let me just explain what Sega Channel is real quick. This is a cartridge device that connects to your Genesis and lets you play games over your cable line. It will only work in certain states depending on your cable provider. Sega says they want to get more on board, however, it may take a few years to expand the service. The service will initially launch in a couple weeks and will cover most of those games that are on the service in a future episode. Anyways, going back to the question, I do think this will be a new way we rent games. I don't think it will actually replace hard copies of games themselves. But just like with pay-per-view, it's much easier to stay home and rent a movie, so why not a game too? I can see Nintendo jumping on board eventually, but I think it's still going to be some time before it becomes accessible to the majority of gamers. I can see a time though, basically when cable taking over the way we rent most media, but I don't believe it will replace buying a copy of either a game or a movie. People like owning their favorite movies and games, after all. Terry E. from Indiana wrote in, and he says they think there's way too many sequels in video games, and they think developers should take the time to focus on new experiences instead of releasing different versions of the same game every year. Well, Terry, I kind of agree with you, somewhat. I believe that we are starting to see with some sports games where every year we get pretty much the same game with updated rosters. That's a perfect example of what you're saying. It's kind of unnecessary unless you're really a sports fanatic, and you just have to have the most up-to-date roster. Unfortunately, there's no way for companies to release a roster add-on on cartridges for these games yet. Maybe in the future, this could be a solution, kind of like Sonic and Knuckles. You can plug that in and have an updated game. Maybe we could do that with, NHL, NFL games, but we'll have to see if that ever happens. As far as other titles, I think, that depends on the quality and effort by the developer. I mean, Sonic is a good example. We have seen nearly a dozen Sonic games across 3 platforms in just 3 years. While this seems excessive, and it probably is, Sega puts out new and improved experiences every time, building on a framework of the last release. But one thing I will say, I would have liked to seen at least one more Mario game these last 3 years, and maybe one less Sonic game. Now it's time for the latest rumors. The massively popular PC game Doom is said to be coming to more home consoles next year, And possibly most surprising, it may even come to the current 16-bit consoles. I don't know how they'll pull it off, but I guess anything is possible. I mean, it's not like they're trying to make it run on a calculator. An industry insider says Nintendo's new console may have a way of playing discs using a future planned attachment that would connect to an expansion port on the system. This is pretty exciting, as it has been kind of disappointing that the new console has reported to use cartridges and not CDs. I'm hoping this insider is right and we'll see these discs will be CDs and not anything else, because that would just be pointless. Before we leave this week behind, let's talk about what's coming up in the near future of video games. 3DO is planning on releasing an expansion for their system next year, which will increase the power from 32-bit to 64-bit. This is said to be in an effort to remain competitive with Sega, Nintendo, and Sony's new systems that are coming out next year. Speaking of Sony, their PlayStation has signed on just about every Japanese game developer, besides Sega and Nintendo, of course. Konami, Namco, and Capcom are all currently developing games for the US launch, making it appear like it could be a real challenger against the upcoming Saturn and Ultra 64. Well, that's all for tonight. This is Johnny M, and I'll be here again next week with all the hottest info you need to know.